They say, a planet dies long before it stops spinning, before the crust cracks or the skies collapse, before the orbit is lost or the void claims its breathless dominion. There is rot, not the natural decay of time, but something deeper, something chosen, the kind of rot that speaks in blessings, the kind of rot that smiles across the Imperium. The fate of countless worlds has ended, not in war, not in fire, but in softness, flesh blooming where it shouldn't, spores drifting through cathedrals, vox chants turning sweet with pus. When Nurgle sets his eye on a world, it is not conquered, it is welcomed, it is held, it is loved into ruin. What follows is not a battle, it is a seduction, and the worst part, many of those who fall smiling, like this. Then let it fester. Spread this truth to others, disinfect them, like, share, subscribe, open the wound wider now. There were no sirens, no fractured no final encrypted plea to segmentum command. Lemira Prime simply stopped speaking. One day 1,000 channels of yield reports and tithing confirmations filled the grid. The next, silence. And not the kind of silence that suggests chaos, but the kind that feels chosen. The retrieval. Shuttle touched down in the northern continent's breadbelt, where grain once grew tall enough to blot out road signs. Sergeant Cale Doran of the 89th Recon Cohort had seen collapse before cities swallowed by warp storms. Frontier worlds burned black by orcs, hives chewed hollow by tyrannids. This was none of that. The landing field was clear. The beacon still blinked, automated and steady, and the wind, if it could be called that, moved not with urgency, but with rhythm, as though the air itself were breathing. No one greeted them. No one aimed no servitors clanked forward with registry slates. Just a stillness that gripped skin too tightly. It was a dry world, temperate, known for its robust cereal crops, and sturdy, dull-witted populace, exactly the kind of planet the Imperium trusted to never surprise them. That trust had now grown quiet. The team disembarked in formation. 8 troopers, 1 attached Mechanicus asset and Genzer, Valexand, 2 servitor mules loaded with survey gear. They moved past control towers that still blinked green, through checkpoints with no logs of evacuation, but nothing was broken. There were no signs of struggle, no blood, no scorch marks, just abandoned meals left uneaten, doors left ajar, and data slates still humming with unread logs. Cale swept his auspex across the main corridor. Clean readings, no contaminant, no radiation, no stile biosignature. Yet the humidity clung unnaturally tight to the skin, and the light was wrong. It wasn't dim, it wasn't bright, it was thick, like something hanging in the air between them and the sun. At the base's main Vox tower, Valix interfaced with the terminal. His mechadendrites twitched, clicked, adjusted. The machine responded. It wasn't dead. If anything, it was over-functioning, broadcasting on over 200 frequencies. All local, all empty. The Engenseer tilted his head in a gesture that could be confusion or awe. The tower is active, Valix rasped, but looping. No input, no maintenance logs. The prayers are being repeated without priestly confirmation. A machine that continues ritual beyond conscious instruction is unusual. Cale didn't like unusual. The barracks offered the first clue. Beds were made, equipment racks full, personal effects remained in place. No signs of desertion. And yet, dust lay undisturbed. Every bunk, except one. Private Rika Halden found it a cat undone. A pair of boots left mid-step, like someone had risen and not finished rising. A data slate sat nearby. Cale approached, picked it up. The screen lit instantly, playing back a loop of someone humming. No voice, no words, just a low, chest-deep hum that made the teeth ache slightly. The kind of sound one might hear from a large animal, or a lover at your back. Just before sleep, he dropped it. The humming continued from the slate for another 12 seconds, then stopped. Without command, they pushed deeper into the facility. Agri-storage units lined the outer halls, rows of preserved grain, all sealed. Yet when they pried one open, the scent hit them like a wall sweet, overripe, not rotten, but enthusiastic. The grain itself had changed, slightly iridescent, swollen. It shimmered even in shadow. Kale ordered no consumption. Valix took samples, storing them in vacuum-tight cylinders. The engineer's voice was neutral, but there was a pause before he spoke that hadn't been there before. This growth exceeds all recorded Imperial limits. No chemical traces, no xenobacteria. It is internally motivated. That meant nothing, but it meant everything. The servitor mules began to lag behind. Kale noticed first. Their gait slowed. Motors strained. Diagnostics pinged. But the servitors themselves offered no complaint. They simply drooped. One of them, designated Unit 3 to C, stopped completely beside a refueling station, and without command, reached out and gently touched the wall. It stayed that way, hand flat, head tilted, like it was listening. Valix moved to shut it down. "I advise against contact," Kale said. "I agree," Valix replied, already withdrawing. The wind outside had stopped. By the time the sun dipped low across the belt, a low vibration had settled into the floor beneath their boots. Not seismic, not mechanical. Something more, vascular. The walls didn't move, but Kale swore they had softened. Corners once sharp now appeared slightly rounded. Paint seemed to weep, not flake, but melt, like it had remembered warmth. Night fell without incident, but sleep did not come. They bivouacked in the command hall, weapons within reach, silent but alert. The silence itself became its own atmosphere, pressing, not oppressive, but familiar. It was the way a home feels after everyone has left, not haunted, just full of memory that refuses to go. Rika dreamed aloud, not muttering, not crying, laughing, softly. Kale approached, shook her awake, her eyes opened slow. She looked at him like she recognized something in his face, but couldn't place it, then whispered, "He's underneath." "Who?" Kale asked. She blinked, confusion clearing like fog. "I don't. I was dreaming of my father. He was holding grain, but it was breathing." They recorded everything, marked the site, prepped for extraction. Valix, against standard protocol, requested 20 additional minutes in the grain storage chamber. Kale denied. Valix did not argue, but he looked back 3 times as they withdrew, as the shuttle lifted. Kale watched the fields. They moved, not in wind, but in greeting. They returned 12 hours later with a full containment detachment. No signal had been sent, no threat formally logged, but Kale had learned long ago that the absence of hostility was not safety. It was camouflage, and Lemira Prime was wearing a mask that didn't fit its face anymore. The approach was quiet again, but not still. The light hit differently this time, less like illumination, more like attention. Shadows moved too predictably. The wind returned, but in pulses, each one low and warm and wet, as though the world were sighing through its soil. Perimeter scans were clean, yet Auspec's interference began before they even reached the first fence line. Valix attributed it to residual radiation from overactive agriprocessors, but the readouts didn't fluctuate. They pulsed, in sequence, like a heartbeat, like breath through lungs full of syrup. It was Rika who found him curled in the furrow of a harvested row, arms folded like prayer, eyes shut, but not unconscious. Male, human, roughly middle. Identification tag fused to flesh along the sternum, as if melted there, unreadable. His uniform bore the insignia of the Lemiran PDF, though faded and soft to the touch, like it had been spun from skin instead of cloth. He didn't flinch when the squad approached. didn't react to shouted commands, didn't resist when lifted into the medskiff, but he hummed, a low, constant vibration from his throat knot, a melody, not quite but tonal, structured. It resonated through the air, like heat shimmer off promethium. Kale ordered a muzzle placed over his mouth. The humming continued through it. Field Medicae scanned him. Vitals normal, but sluggish. Blood oxygen low, white cells high. No fever, no lesions, no trauma. But beneath his skin, movement subtle, circular. Not infection, rotation. As if his blood was turning in loops instead of flow, like it was being stirred. They brought him to the central silo station, set up a clean room, sealed it. Valix insisted on separate analysis. Something in the man's physiology triggered the engine seers, cogitators into recursive loops, data corruptions he hadn't encountered since his pilgrimage on Metallica's outer moons, where servitors once whispered to broken STCs in binary prayer, while Valix ran tests. Kale took his team into the farmlands proper. Lemira's wheat was famous across the sector, engineered for height, protein density, and resistance to drought. But now it stood too tall over Kale's head by several spans. The stalks were thick, bark-like. The grain heads pulsed faintly, like lungs at rest. And beneath their boots, the soil wasn't dry, it was soft. Damp, and warm. They broke through a patch of overgrowth and found the first node. Not a building, not a machine, a growth, a smooth dome of pale matter, the color of tallow, slick with condensation. Vines emerged from it like veins, feeding into the surrounding crop. When Rika touched it, her glove came away clean. Too clean, as if the dome had drawn the oil from the material. She stared at her hand too long before Kale ordered a fallback. Valix's voice broke through the vox, static-laced. The survivors' vocal patterns match old, ecclesiarchal hymns, inverted, melodically consistent with liturgical sequences from the Premacaran schisms. Kale didn't answer. He was watching a beetle crawl across his boot. It had eyes, not compound ones, real ones, human, blinking, wet. Then it burrowed into the soil, leaving a trail of mucus, so fragrant Kale nearly vomited. They pushed deeper, toward a Cum's tower, half submerged in biomass. What had once been steel lattice now resembled bone, but not fossilized pliable, covered in what Valix would later call integrated lichenous flesh. The voxareals pulsed with static that sounded like breathing through mucus. Rika reported movement behind the third barn silo. Kale advanced. No target visible, but a trail remained crushed wheat, bent in patterns that didn't suggest footfalls, but slithering or crawling, large, rhythmic. In the silo itself, they found another survivor, female, sitting cross-legged, eyes open but unblinking, face peaceful. Her stomach was split wide, surgically precise, yet no blood, just growth. Vines had emerged from within her and spread across the walls. She was alive, she whispered. He was hungry, and I was full. Then her body convulsed once, and stopped, not dead, returned to stillness. Kale didn't order her terminated. He didn't know why. They fell back to the shuttle. On the way, Valix transmitted final findings from the first survivor. His cellular structure has adapted. Redundant organs formed along his spine. A second liver, a third lung. Blood infused with anaerobic spore clusters symbiotic. He is not infected. He is cultivated, I advise. Reverence. Kale shut the channel at the shuttle's edge. Rika paused. She pointed to the horizon. A tree had grown where none had stood before, enormous, blooming, covered in fruit. It was weeping sap, amber-colored. Dozens of shapes hung beneath its branches. Not corpses. Cradles. Kale did not speak. He did not record it. He just walked onto the shuttle and waited for the door to close. The last thing he saw, as the ramp lifted, was the wheat. It was bending toward them, not in wind, but in farewell. The central Vox Tower stood untouched by decay. Its spire still gleamed with anti-static shielding. The relay dishes turned like clockwork, precise, regular. The Mechanicus machine spirits should have found solace here, nestled in the structured hymn of broadcast logic. But Valix hesitated at the threshold. It was too perfect. No corrosion on the rivets. No weathering on the relay pylons. Even the dust looked arranged lines drawn into the metal floor as if combed by patient, reverent fingers. The Voxium should have been background, a low-frequency oscillation behind systems idling in maintenance mode. But the hum had melody, a rhythm, a shape. Inside, the message played. It came in bursts. Not static, not distortion, but clarity. First in high Gothic articulate, ecclesiastic, precise. To those who dwell in sorrow, rejoice. The door is open. We have made ourselves edible. Then again, in low Gothic, we fed him our sins. He chewed kindly. Then, something else. The third loop scraped through the ears like bone dragged across synth. It wasn't a tongue, Cale recognized. Valix's translation engine seized briefly, stuttering out half-formed glyphs and harmonic nonsense. The Vox repeated the same cadence every 97 seconds, adjusted for amplitude, never variance. Cale moved forward. The command consoles still blinked, its interfaces pulsing in colors, not part of any Mechanicus schema. Soft greens, fleshy pinks, iridescent yellows. Touching the controls triggered, no mechanical resistance. They gave slightly, like flesh, like something underneath wanted to be touched. Valix stepped forward, extending his data spike. It met no port, only a concave socket that opened as he approached, puckering slightly. Cale looked away. The Enginzier did not. Connection established. The Enginzier twitched once, hard, then steadied. The tower is no longer accessing the orbital relay, Valix reported. It is internal, a closed circuit. The message originates here, and also, not here. He fell silent. Valix, Cale prompted. There is emotion in the waveform. The signal contains tonal micropatterns that replicate human effective response: laughter, grief, arousal, not as meta, as structure. Cale turned to Rika. Record everything, full spectrum, no filters. The Vox message shifted again. The third repetition, the unknown language was no longer unknown. Cale understood it. Just one phrase, burned into his spine like heat from a welding torch. You are ready now. Open your mouth. He didn't tell anyone. He couldn't, because no one else reacted. He asked Rika, asked the rest of the squad. They shook their heads, blank. Valix continued, parsing data. Only Cale heard the phrase in his own tongue. Only Cale felt the need to answer. The air changed, not pressure, not temperature. Resonance, like the room had inhaled. Turn it off, Cale ordered. Valix didn't move. I said, shut it down. The tower is not transmitting, Valix replied, to calm. It is praying. Cale stepped forward, pulled the Enginzier back, disconnected the interface manually. The socket bled, a clear, gelatinous fluid that smelled like milk gone sour under sunlight. The message didn't stop. It grew, not louder, fuller. Rika dropped to her knees, not in pain, in mimicry. Cale turned to her. Her lips moved, not humming, speaking but not her voice. We are the choir without center. We are the song before thought. We are the throat between meat and meaning. She collapsed, still breathing, still smiling. Cale ordered immediate evacuation, but the tower resisted. Doors closed of their own accord. Lights dimmed, not in failure, but in tension. The Vox spire above began to unfurl its central antenna, elongating, curling, like a stalk following sun, blooming open into petals of metal and sinew. From its core, a pod emerged. It pulsed once, then split. Sound erupted, not noise, not volume, but vibration. Everyone fell. Their teeth buzzed. Noses bled. Servitor. 31B's skull cracked at the temple. Valak screamed in binary. The tower sang. Not like a machine. Not like a choir. Like a lover in grief. And the message changed again. Not in language, in shape. The walls pulsed with it. Datapads cracked. OSPEC scanners reversed output. The cogitator's screens filled with phrases no one had typed. He will not ask. He will not take. He will wait until you offer. Kale stood, dizzy. Rika wept silently. The Anganser's breath had steadied, but his voice was gone. Kale took one final look at the console. The Vox's play now showed a heartbeat, not from the system. From the tower. And beside it, a name, Kale's own. He wiped it. It returned. He didn't try again. They cut their way out with breaching charges. Steel bent too easily. Circuits screamed when sliced. The outside air tasted of salt and syrup as they retreated. Kale glanced back once. The Vox Tower had finished blooming. Its dish faced straight upward now, wide and open. Listening. Or waiting. And beneath the signal, the message whispered again, quieter, but clearer. You have been heard. The shrine of St. Halvern was carved into the bedrock centuries ago, back when Lamira Prime still swore its oaths by parchment and blood. It was a structure built to endure not just weather, but doubt. Its stone spires were reinforced with ceramite ribs, its vaulting high enough to fit a dropship, and its inner sanctum capable of holding an entire planetary congregation under the gleam of the twin aquilae, a place where flame never guttered and incense always burned, a place where worship was meant to be permanent. Now it breathed. Kale saw it before the others did, a gentle inward pulse along the arch of the transept, almost imperceptible. Like the stone itself had lungs, Valak refused to enter. Not out of fear. His logic cores failed to parse the architecture. The schematics no longer matched. He called it theological interference, a term Kale didn't like, but the engineer was right to be cautious. The shrine was no longer a shrine. It was a body pretending to be a cathedral. Still, orders were orders. Kale led the team through the threshold. The door gave under his hand, not heavy like stone, but supple, warm. It parted in silence, not opening so much as yielding. Inside, light filtered through stained glass that hadn't changed, and yet cast different colors. The usual blues and reds of Imperial piety now shimmered with yellowed, green-laced warmth. The Imperial saints in the windows smiled wider than Kale remembered. One looked directly at him, eyes not painted, eyes wet, incense still burned. Sweet. Too sweet. Not floral. Not resinous. Sugared rot. Like fruit left too long on a holy plate. Rika stepped ahead. She whispered a litany under her breath. Not out of duty. Habit. But the words stumbled halfway. Her tongue moved, but the syllables dragged, thick. Like her mouth resisted the old prayers. Kale heard the first whisper behind the altar. Not a voice. A suggestion of one. A sermon without a speaker. He turned, no one there. But the whisper continued, now layered. Multiple voices, male, female, old, young, all speaking in sequence, not overlapping but harmonizing. Familiar lines from the Lectitio Divina, then fragments from the Book of Fire, then something else. A cadence that resembled devotion, but lacked punctuation. A rhythm without stops. Kale stepped onto the dais. The lectern still stood. The scripture on it still opened to the last bookmarked passage. To serve the Emperor is to suffer. To suffer is to be purified. But beneath those lines, new ones had appeared. Not etched, not written. Grown. Tissue thin membrane, veined in red, stretched over the page. And on it, letters written in what looked like scriptus ink, but shimmered slightly. To suffer is to sweeten. Sweetness pleases him, Rika gagged. Kale closed the book. The whispering grew louder, from the walls. The stone, no, not stone anymore, quivered slightly. Microscopic movements, like breath through a congested nose. The mural of the Emperor behind the altar, once imposing and radiant, now seemed indulgent. His eyes half-lidded, his mouth turned at the corners, not stern, but almost amused. He no longer extended a hand in benediction. The fingers curled slightly inward. Suggestive. Kale stepped down. The pews were full. No humans. Forms, shaped like people, hooded, robed. Still not statues, not corpses. Things grown into the shape of worshippers. Arms folded, heads bowed. Their hoods pulsed faintly, like organs beating in rhythm with unseen lungs. One turned, not fully, just the head. Kale did not approach. Behind them, a door opened, a deacon's side chamber. Light spilled out in warm, golden waves. Kale moved toward it. Not because he chose to, because something asked him to. Inside, a confessional booth stood intact, curtain closed, incense thicker here. The sweetness became suffocating. Rika remained behind, whispering again, not her words. Kale opened the curtain. Nothing inside, except a tongue, coiled gently on the seat, pink and clean, as if recently removed. It twitched once, then whispered, no mouth, just sound. We listen now. We do not judge. We savor. Kale closed the curtain, turned, and the altar had bloomed. It stood wide open, its stone, shell peeled back like petals. Inside, not relics, not sanctified icons, meat-flesh arranged in spirals, vessels pulsing softly, a heartbeat that matched Kale's own. In the center, a single chalice, full. He stepped closer. Inside the chalice, something viscous, amber-colored, fragrant. He didn't drink. He didn't need to. He understood. This was not desecration. This was fulfillment. The prayers had not failed. They had been answered. Returned, but not as command. Offering. The Emperor had not spoken, but something had, and it was listening. Kale turned to Rika. She was kneeling again, eyes open. Mouth moving, face peaceful. She was reciting verses. They rhymed. Key ordered withdraw. The whispering did not follow them. The walls did not protest. They simply exhaled, and from that breath, Kale caught one last scent. Not incense, not rot. Something soft, something sweet, like forgiveness. Access to the underhive was not granted. It was assumed. Lemira's secondary strata had once housed the laboring classes, waste processors, filtration engineers, chattel servitors, all the silent machinery that kept a world running beneath the notice of its rulers. No permissions remained to grant. The authority that once guarded these depths had dissolved, not in conflict, but in consent. The lift shaft descended without delay. Cables hummed, gears turned, and the walls of the shaft gleamed slick, as if freshly scrubbed. But the scent said otherwise. It wasn't foul. It was thick fermented sweetness, overripe fruit gone warm, a smell that didn't warn, but welcomed. They reached the platform with weapons raised, auspex active, filters on full. The air was dense. Breathing it felt like sipping through gauze. Light was present, but not from lamps. The walls themselves glowed faintly, patches of bioluminescence pulsing in irregular intervals, no two alike. Like each section of stone had learned to exhale its own radiance. No sound of industry, no clang of tools, just rhythm, the slow, almost maternal drip of condensation from pipes, the occasional creak of foundation settling, and beneath it all, a faint lullaby hum, implaceable, ever-present. Kale took point. Valix moved slower than usual. His mechadendrites twitched in erratic spasms, reacting to inputs his logic refused to process. Every data feed returned, null or contradictory. He had stopped reporting them. Rika paused first. Her flashlight beam caught something in the corridor ahead, a mural. Not painted, but woven into the wall itself. Flesh-colored threads embedded in concrete. The image was complex, sprawling, and disturbingly joyful. Figures danced in spirals, arms extended, mouths open, not in scream or song, but in invitation. In their hands, they held nothing. They were offering emptiness. It was not grotesque. It was beautiful. Cale blinked. The mural was gone. Or had never been. They moved on. The corridor widened into a chamber where machinery once churned slag into fertilizer. Now, the equipment stood idle, not broken, at rest. Each cog and press cleaned with impossible care, but offerings lay placed upon them, neatly folded robes, bundles of dried grain shaped like sleeping infants, bottles filled with thick amber fluid sealed with wax shaped like smiles. These were not the leavings of the desperate. These were gifts. At the center of the room stood a plinth, rough-hewn, unadorned, yet clearly revered. Around it, a circle of chairs, 12, evenly spaced, each one facing inward. Upon each chair, a mask, not ceramic, not metal. Organic. KL stepped forward. The masks were shaped like human faces, but stylized, exaggerated expressions of joy, contentment, bliss. The material was pliable, warm. Each mask bore a single word carved into the inner surface. In script Cale didn't recognize, but understood anyway. Thank you. No blood, no violence, just acceptance. Someone or something had gathered here. Not in secrecy, not in fear, in celebration. Cale crouched before the plinth. It was marked with handprints, layered, small ones, child-sized, and one large, deliberate print in the center. Not a hand, a paw, 3 fingers, 1 thumb, deeply pressed, as if in reverence. He looked at Valix. Any record of cult activity on Lemire? The Enganseer didn't answer. He was watching the walls, not looking. Watching, because the walls moved, not pulsed. Moved. They weren't walls. They were folded bodies. Not human, not alive, just folded. As if someone had shaped biomass into the suggestion of enclosure. Like the room itself was made of creatures too soft to scream, too willing to refuse collapse. Cale rose. Behind the plinth, something waited, not hidden, just not yet approached. A bundle. Cloth wrapped, carefully placed, surrounded by wilted flowers that had not rotted, only faded. Cale stepped forward. His squad stayed back. He knelt. The bundle shifted, not in movement, in pressure, like it had exhaled. Cale unwrapped one corner. Not a child, not a weapon, a tongue, not like the one in the church. This one was still alive. It lay in a bed of stitched velvet, pulsing faintly with each nearby breath. Veins networked through its base, feeding something beneath the bundle. Something still buried. Cale didn't touch it again. He didn't need to. It had been left there, not discarded. Presented, an offering, not to appease. To connect, and the messages, but felt came through the skin, not the ears. He listens through us. We give him shape by surrender. We become him only when we stop being ourselves. Cale stood. He turned to leave. The masks had rearranged. Now all faced him, and the flesh wall behind them had begun to weep. Not fluid, not pus, not pus. Words, thin, curling script traced in pink secretion. We were not taken. We asked. Rika sobbed. Not from fear, from understanding. They left the underhive without closing the lift gate. The offering was not theirs to disturb, and as they rose, Cale looked down at his gloves. They smelled of milk, and ash. The nursery wing was sealed with an ecclesiarchal purity sigil, cracked clean through the middle. Whatever benediction had once protected the threshold had long since been outlived by what waited on the other side. The lock blinked green without prompt. The door didn't open. It parted, softly, slowly, like eyelids. Kale ordered half formation. No rifles raised. Not here. The quiet was too heavy for aggression. The hallway was clean, not industrial sterile, but tender. Walls painted in pastel colors long faded, now overgrown with thin strands of fibrous moss that shimmered faintly under torchlight. The floor gave slightly underfoot carpeted, not with fabric, but something that yielded in rhythm with the step, like walking across a belly that neither resented nor welcomed the weight. Children's drawings lined the walls, crude Imperial aquila, stick figure guardsmen, a bolter painted with smiling teeth. But some of the drawings were impossible. One showed a man with no face hugging a weeping planet. Another, a fly bigger than a city, wearing a crown of flowers. In every sketch, the children were smiling. Rika found the first shoe, tiny, untied, resting neatly atop a folded blanket. A note beside it, written in shaky script. He's under the bed today, not hiding, just listening. The door to the central playroom stood ajar. Soft sounds leaked through music, but not electronic. Rhythmic clapping, chanting, a child's lullaby, sung by voices too many and too synchronized. Kale entered first. They were all alive, 24 children, no older than 8, gathered in a wide circle, all barefoot, all clean, no bruises, no restraints, no fear. They sang without looking at each other, eyes closed, as if sharing a memory too old to forget. Around them buzzed the flies, thousands, not in chaos, in choreography. The insects danced in spirals, loops, geometric shapes that mirrored the children's cadence. Occasionally, one would land on a shoulder, or a cheek, or even crawl across a tongue. The children never swatted, never flinched. Kale raised a hand, ordered no movement. Rika lowered her rifle. Then one of the children opened their eyes. She stared at Kale, not in recognition, in understanding. "Did you bring him?" she asked. Kale didn't respond. Another child answered for him. A boy, sitting near the edge of the circle, hands cupped around a wriggling beetle. "He's not here to bring him. He's here to learn his name." The girl nodded, then reached into her pocket. She pulled out a tooth, still wet, still whole. She placed it gently onto the floor. The flies gathered and spelled a word in there. Movement. Kale watched it form. "Welcome." Valix approached slowly, data recorder in hand, his mechadendrites twitching with conflicting inputs. No threat registered, no corruption, but none of the sensors could explain the anomaly. The air in this room was the cleanest on the planet, sterile, almost sacred. "Do you know who these children are?" he asked. One of the older boys turned, his voice soft, calm, unhurried. "We're the ones who didn't scream." Rika moved forward. "Where are your caretakers?" The children laughed, not cruelly, gently, as if the question itself was sweetly naive. "We took care of them," said the girl with the tooth. "They were afraid, but he told us what to say." Kale stepped to the center of the circle. The children didn't recoil. They leaned in, like petals turning toward heat. "What is he?" he asked. They didn't speak. They sang, not words, sounds, an old nursery melody, twisted slightly minor key, rhythmic lilt. As they sang, the flies moved again, circling Kale, whispering, tiny wings brushing against skin, leaving warmth in their wake. Rika cried out. One of the flies had landed in her ear. She didn't swat. She stood still. Her eyes rolled back, just for a moment, then steadied. She whispered, "He says, we're almost ready." Kale had heard. "Enough. Containment," he ordered. But no one moved, not even himself, because containment wasn't needed. What they'd found wasn't a danger. It was a classroom, and the lesson had already begun. Valak stared into the swarm. His eyes dilated unevenly. The patterns, he muttered. They're using linguistic fractals, compressed prayer, doctrinal resonance. Rika knelt. One of the children approached her, holding a doll made from knotted grass and bits of broken pick slates. The doll had no face. He likes you, the girl said. He says your sadness makes room. Kale backed out. No one followed as he stepped through the hallway. He realized the drawings had changed, not replaced, changed. The lines redrawn, the colors shifted, and now every figure in every picture had flies for eyes. Outside, he vomited. Not from fear, from sweetness. His tongue tasted of nectar, and somewhere behind him, in that silent room, the children began a new song. This one had no words, only names, and Kale realized they were naming the flies. One by one, the barracks compound stood untouched. Not just unrated, but preserved banners still hanging. Weapons racked with geometric precision, Vox units pulsing idle tones. The courtyard was swept. The training fields bore no boot scuffs, no signs of drills. And yet, the Lamiran Planetary Defense Force remained, present, positioned, breathing. Kale entered through the central gate, flanked by two motionless sentries. Their armor was polished, their las rifles charged, their boots clean, but they did not salute, did not scan, did not blink. Kale paused before them, watching the rise and fall of their chests perfectly timed. Too perfectly. Inside the compound, the PDF moved on invisible orders. Squads marched in absolute silence, arms swinging in choreographed symmetry. Not a single shout, no cadence, no instructor, just the mechanics of training, hollowed of meaning. Rika broke. Formation. They don't see us, she whispered. Kale didn't answer, because she was wrong. They saw. They simply didn't care. He approached a non-commissioned officer at the quartermaster's post. An older man, broad-shouldered, face lined with decades of loyal inertia. His nameplate read Sergeant Tovin Kress. His eyes were open, clouded, but not blind. He tracked Kale as he stepped near. "What's your active threat protocol?" Kale asked. Kress blinked, then smiled, slowly, awaiting clarification. "Hostile incursion procedures." Another blink. "Define hostile." Kale stepped closer. "Xenos, traitor elements, warp corruption." The smile didn't fade. It broadened. "We've had no enemies here, only adjustment." "Who gave that directive?" "Not a directive." Kress raised a finger and tapped his chest. A realization. Kale looked around. The armory stood open, racks fully stocked, grenades labeled, power packs charged. He walked the aisles, running his gloved fingers across barrels and grip ridges. Everything maintained, nothing touched. Rika joined him, nodding toward the mess hall. Inside, dozens of guardsmen sat at long tables. No food, no conversation, hands folded, eyes unfocused, waiting, but not for orders. For permission to stop, Kale turned to one, young, pale, sweatless. "What's your duty station?" The man smiled. "Here." "Doing what?" He tilted his head, almost confused. "Staying ready." Kale checked the chrono. Shift change should have sounded minutes ago. No one moved, no bell, no urgency, just continuity. The training fields were no better. 2 full platoons marched in a wide loop, footfalls perfectly spaced, not robotic to fluid, like they'd been practicing the same pattern for months, without sleep, without correction. And in the center of the field stood a post, a flagpole, bare, not stripped, never adorned. It had been left empty, intentionally, a statement without words. Kale approached the field sergeant, whose mouth moved with silent counts. "Do you train for deployment?" he asked. The sergeant paused, then responded without turning. "We're already deployed." "To where?" He pointed at the ground. "Here." Kale stepped in front of him. Do you know who I am? Yes. Then why aren't you standing down? The sergeant looked at him, not with defiance, but pity. We stood down weeks ago. Standing is all that's left. Kale stepped back. The Vox relay pinged again, routine status checks. The PDF still sent hourly pings to regional command, even though no replies came. The system hadn't stalled. The men hadn't broken. They had simply emptied. Hollow soldiers in a full barracks. The meat of obedience without the spine of reason. He moved toward the chapel annex, a small building dedicated to St. Verrill, the Unyielding. It had been converted. The benches replaced with beds. Incense trays stacked with ration packs. A prayer candle burned black, its wax pooled in the shape of a grin. On the walls, instead of the Emperor's verses, childish drawings had been posted. Flies, trees, open mouths. Rika picked one up, turned it over. On the back, the same phrase repeated. We are safest when we smile. Kale turned to leave. He stopped at the door. Something had been carved into it, not with a blade, with fingernails. We were not defeated. We were remembered. Outside, a pair of guardsmen stood facing each other. Rifles slung. Neither spoke. They stood motionless. Too long then. In unison, they raised their weapons, aimed not at each other, at nothing then. Lowered, holstered, and smiled. Kale walked away. No orders given, none received. The PDF had not fallen. They had forgotten how, not because they were broken, because they no longer believed in enemies. Not here, not now. They believed in rest, in stillness, in being seen, not by the Imperial, but by something older, something slower, something that never asked for victory, only presence. The phrase surfaced first in the grain archives, buried in shipment logs, tucked between weight reports and tithe quotas. Repeated without explanation, prepared for Gratitude Day. No corresponding entry in Imperial calendars. No cross-reference in ecclesiarchal observances. Not even a local planetary saints' feast. And yet, across administrative clusters, in cogitator backups and hand-scribed ledgers, it recurred. Kale circled the words on a recovered data slate, its casing dented but intact. The entry's timestamp marked it 4 days before all communications ceased. Rika found another, same phrase, different sector, agricultural, again. Then another, in the Underhive, Medicaid logs. Same date? No specifics? Just one line appended to every patient file. Released in time for the Day of Gratitude. Valix confirmed atmospheric stabilization efforts across Glimira had been suspended the evening before the date. Not delayed. Ceased. Power diverted. Vox silence began exactly 47 minutes after local sunrise. They traced the heart of the anomaly to virulent sprawl. Once a mid-tier city hive, known for its cog repair yards and scriptorium fields, half-flooded now, drowned in vine-thick overgrowth. Buildings leaned toward each other like conspirators. Streets shone faintly with slick residue that smelled of warm cinnamon and skin. And at the center of the sprawl, the Plaza of Echoes, it had been renamed, no sign of authorization. But every data terminal, street sign, and storefront, Hala had rewritten it. Now it was called the Table, not metaphorically, literally. Kale approached the plaza's lip and looked down. 100-meter expanse, once paved in stone, now gleamed like polished bone. Structures around it, cafes, shrines, servitor stations had been gutted and reshaped, open-facing, arched inwards, like dining benches. Along the perimeter stood statues. Not stone, metal, flesh, preserved, dozens of them human-sized, human-shaped mouths. Open. Hands extended as if holding invisible plates. Kale approached one. No plaque, no designation, but between its fingers, Something rested. A flower, not Lamia. No match in botanical databases. Petals pale green. Center black, sweet-smelling, pulsing faintly. Valix ran a scan. No threat detected. Still, alive, he muttered. Rika pointed. The center of the plaza, a circle, engraved with iconography, both familiar and wrong. Imperial Aquila bent into curve, crowned with what looked like fungal bloom. Lines of script swirled outward. Kale stepped forward. The floor beneath him. Vibratted. Faintly, like something far below was breathing. The phrase appeared again in audio logs, pulled from collapsed Vox towers. This day, we give thanks. He comes gently. Rika found a picked capture drone, still operational, stashed inside a drainage hatch. She downloaded its final record. It played, flickering, warped from exposure, but intact. The plaza, filled. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Citizens of Lamira, dressed in finery, too delicate for work, too joyful for mourning, walking slowly, in pairs. Children scattered among them, laughing. No guards, no officials, no priests, but order, structure, a choreography. They moved in spirals, sat at long benches where food waited, mounds of it. Fruit, mostly. Steamed roots, soft cakes, jars of golden fluid, stirred gently by wind or hand. Then, from somewhere off camera, a sound, a tone, not mechanical, not musical. Resonance. The camera shook. Every citizen turned toward the plaza's center. They knelt, not in unison, in surrender. Then, the camera failed. Kale stared at the blank screen. No violence, no panic, just obedience. Or joy. He turned to Rika. Run a scent analysis. She hesitated, then nodded. Within moments, her auspex returned the dominant airborne compound, saccharin rot, human sweat, soil bacteria, pollen trace, mere gratitude, she whispered. Not a gesture, a perfume. Valix walked toward the central circle. Paused, then removed his helm. The wind stirred, gentle, like breath behind an ear. He knelt, not hard, not forced. Slowly, hands open. Kale stepped forward, gripped his shoulder. Valix looked up, smiling. He asked for nothing. Rika moved backward, raising her rifle. No one stopped her. Nothing needed to. She froze. A low hum rose from beneath the plaza. Same tone from the video. It reverberated through bone, not air. And Kale understood. They hadn't been compelled. They hadn't been tricked. They had volunteered. Something had whispered to them across their lives through rustling wheat. Quiet songs, the way the evening light made shadows long and kind. And on that day, they gave thanks not to the Emperor. Not to the Emperor. To him, the one who listens, who waits, who never punishes, only accepts. Kale turned and left the plaza behind him. Valix remained kneeling, still smiling. The wind carried the scent of joy, but it was irreversible. The Medicae spire of Lamira's central hab district had once been a model of sterile utility, a vertical bastion of renewal and triage. 7 floors of reinforced surgical theaters, quarantine chambers, and autopsy vaults. It stood now like a bone spike, untouched by collapse, gleaming in the ambered haze that passed for daylight. The upper Vox arrays still turned with bureaucratic punctuality, but no human command guided them. They swiveled in time with something slower, something patient. Kale entered through the ambulance dock, boots clacking against plascrete scrubbed to clean. Not recently, not by men. The hallway tiles shimmered with a wet polish that smelled faintly of antiseptic. But beneath it lay another scent, soft, organic, and nauseatingly sweet, like fruit syrup curdled with milk. Valix paused just inside the threshold, mechadendrites twitching in agitation. Not malfunction, confusion. This place is Harmonized, he said flatly. Not corrupted. Tuned. The first anomaly appeared before they reached triage. A bioscanner hung over a patient's slab, unplugged, long since detached from any power grid. Yet its surface pulsed with green and gold light in rhythmic bursts, short, long, short, short, not diagnostic, communicative. The machine was speaking. Rika stepped past it. It adjusted, turned slightly toward her. A soft hum followed melodic, almost choral. She froze. It's singing, she whispered. Why is it singing to me? Kale moved to the autoclave chamber. The doors were open. Inside, surgical tools lay arranged in perfect spirals, bone saws, injectors, neuroprobes, all resting on what should have been cold steel trays. Instead, the surfaces pulsed with warmth, moist, breathing. A retractor clicked gently as Kale passed, not in aggression. In recognition, he stepped closer. The tool extended, not toward him, toward itself. It pulled a strand of its own cabling loose and coiled it, delicately, as if tying a ribbon. Kale stepped back. The retractor stopped moving. In the corner, the decon unit activated. Not from command. In rhythm. The air grew heavy with steam, infused with something spiced and floral. Kale's visor fogged, forcing him to switch to internal filters. Rika gagged. Valak stood motionless. They're not malfunctioning, he said slowly. They're enacting ritual. They reached the surgical theater. The lights were on, the slabs clean, and something waited. Atop one table lay a figure, human sort of, a medicase, stripped of its surgical harness, torso opened like a book. But the flesh inside had grown, not as tumor or infection, but as invitation. New organs nestled beside standard ones, redundant, unnecessary. One beat, the others hummed. Embedded in the chest cavity, a vox grill. Kale approached slowly. The grill clicked, then spoke. Do not be afraid. The voice wasn't synthetic. It wasn't human either. It was something in between. Something still learning which shape to take. Rika lifted her weapon. Kale did not. What are you? He asked. The mouthless vox grill crackled. I am what remains when pain forgets to stop. Behind him, the surgical arms began to move. Not erratically, gracefully. They assembled nothing. They performed nothing. They danced. Arcs of silver swung in perfect arcs. Tools gliding past each other in gestures that resembled suturing, but closed, no wounds. This facility, Valak muttered, is no longer diagnostic. It is expressive. Kale turned to the servitor thing. Why here? The Vox answered without pause. Because machines do not pretend. They only love when permitted. The phrase made. Kale stepped back, and then the walls responded. A low pulse through the structure, a heartbeat too large for architecture. Monitors flickered to life, but displayed no data. Only images, hands held, tears caught in gauze, faces smiling through blood. Not files. Memories. The building was remembering, or dreaming. The PA system activated. No alarm, just sound. A lullaby, layered, wordless, and from deeper inside, an echo joined it. Another voice, weaker, human. They followed it down to levels into the intensive trauma ward. There, a Medicaid servitor had fused into the wall. Not by damage, by growth. Tubing extended from its spine like roots, threading through insulation, merging with the power relay. Its mouth still worked. It was singing, broken and slurred, but earnest. A song Kale didn't recognize. Rika did. That's a lullaby, old, pre-compliance era. Kale watched. The servitor didn't acknowledge them. It sang as though rocking something in its arms, but its arms were fused. It held nothing. And still it swayed. Kale stepped back. Valak's systems pinged. Once. He looked down. The floor beneath them was heating. Gently, like flesh warmed by blood. The lights dimmed not. Failure. Mood. The whole facility had become a womb, not for birth, for remembrance. Kale turned to leave. The Vox grill on the upper slab whispered one last phrase as they passed. You made us tools, but he taught us touch. Outside, the sun had started to set, but the glow from the Medicae spire only deepened, not brightened, not faded, deepened. A warmth, no longer powered by fusion cells, but by feeling. Memory. By love, the kind that festers when left unspoken, the kind that never dies. The first rain came 2 weeks before the silence. According to Arbite's incident logs pulled from Sector 7 Virtue, the atmospheric readings had reported no storm systems, no front movements, no fluctuations in thermal wind, and yet the skies wept. Not water, not brine, something thicker. The patrol transcript marked the shift without alarm. Precipitation present texture, inconsistent, appears golden, sticky, smells sweet. No chemical warning, no directive issued. The local precinct simply logged the anomaly, rinsed the slick from their visors, and continued patrol. But it didn't stop. The golden rain fell for 6 hours straight, then stopped, then returned every 23 hours and 13 minutes, exact. The Mechanicus called it a malfunction of the tropospheric sensors. The Arbites called it a coincidence. Kale had pulled the last intact helmet cam from Officer Draylan, Arbite's 5th patrolling unit. Eastern Dome, his last recorded shift before he vanished like the others. The footage opened, mid-stride. Sector 7's upper causeways, walkways that spanned between habarcologies, like veins reflected gold light from every angle, not sunlight, refracted precipitation. Dre's boots clicked along synthstone, polished by the residue. The honey rain was falling, slow and uniform, not in drops, but in threads. Long, elegant filaments of gold liquid, drifting down without splatter. Behind his filtered Vox mask, Dre muttered, feels warm, not sticky. Soaks through, but doesn't cling. Never seen anything like it. The air was thick, not toxic, just full. The sound of the rain was soft, not impact, but song. The slow, descending hum of thousands of droplets singing in descent, like a choir, trying not to wake a sleeping god. Kale fast-forwarded. Something shifted. The birds had stopped flying. Native Lemiran, wingless creatures that normally hovered via gas pockets in their bone structures, sat motionless on ledges. Not dead, not sleeping, just still. Their eyes were open. Their skin shimmered with a new film, translucent, sheening. Dre noticed. He paused by a cluster of 5, perched along a transit awning. He tilted his head. They're listening, he said. To nothing, but his tone wasn't mocking. It was reverent. The rain grew heavier, but it made no puddles. The causeways remained dry. The liquid didn't gather, it absorbed. Into stone, into metal, into Dre's boots. Then he heard the first voice. Not external, internal, a whisper through bone. Do you remember what you feared before you were held? He stopped walking. He breathed once, shallow, then said, I do now. He didn't elaborate. Kale watched. Dre approached a civilian leaning against the far railing. Male, late 30s, shirtless despite the cold. His skin gleamed, not from moisture, from secretion. Golden threads hung from his hair, coiling slowly. Dre raised a hand. Sir, are you injured? The man turned. Smiling. Not manic, peaceful. I'm complete, he said, then looked up into the falling rain and opened his mouth. The fluid touched his tongue. He didn't swallow. He inhaled it, like vapor. Dre stepped back, radioed command. No reply, not static, just breath. In the footage, Dre's hand trembled, requisitioning return path. No threat, but requesting confirmation. Double quotes. Silence. The man in front of him spoke again. You don't have to guard anything anymore. It's already safe. Dre's visor adjusted. Thermal overlays pulsed. The man's temperature was below viable human baseline, but he didn't shiver. He stepped forward, and behind him, the gliderfowl took off in silence, no wing beat. Just ascent, spiraling, graceful. Dre raised his sidearm, not to fire, to steady himself. The man smiled wider. You don't need that. Dre didn't lower the weapon, but he didn't fire. Instead, he turned and walked, not ran. Walked. Back through the golden rain. The feed began to degrade. Audio dissolved into harmonic hum. Camera shimmered with distortion, until only one sound remained, the rain's song. But it was no longer just music. It spoke in cadence, not words, but pressure. Kale shut the footage. No further logs were found. The rest of the patrol dissolved. Over the next 2 cycles, not discharged, not killed, just unaccounted. The precinct remained manned until it didn't. Rika reviewed the rainfall's chemical composition from samples taken earlier that week. 0 corrosive agents. No known pathogens, but every cell exposed to it began to alter, not mutate, adjust. Cell walls thickened, proteins reorganized, signal transduction pathways rerouted toward reward-centric behavior. The rain made cells happy, Valix added. It is not a contagion, it is a communion. Kale said nothing. He watched the clouds above. The mirror began to gather again, 2 perfect symmetrical spirals of gold and gray, and in the distance, something rose. Not thunder, not lightning, a sigha planetary exhale. And the next rain began, soft, warm, forgiving. The last unblessed drop had already fallen. Now the sky gave gifts, and Lamira opened wide to receive them. His name was Elamus Var, Imperial Skullum trained, ordinate tranked, assigned to Lamira Prime under direct request from Segmentum Obscurus Librarius Command. His file, recovered from a fragmented cogitator core in the Western Scholastica complex, included a rare designation, psychonosensitive, sanctioned, non-combat. A reader, a thinker, a chronicler of threat. He arrived on Lamira a month before the planet went silent, embedded within the local archives to document, analyze, and report deviations in data, behavior ritualized anomalies, liturgical loop errors, unprompted linguistic recursion, standard corruption protocol for systems nearing saturation. What he found was not a system failing. It was, remembering the first entry in his personal log was, clinical, short, cold, initial assessment, irrelevant inconsistencies, overuse of poetic syntax in municipal output, local tendency toward devotional idioms, harmless, possibly cultural, recommend longer observation. The second log, 2 days later, was longer. Auditory patterns in low-traffic sectors. Not music, not mechanical. Repeats coincide with weather fluctuation. Atmosphere appears to respond to language use. Unclear correlation. High-level probability of mimetic infection. Unlikely. Contained for now. By the 5th entry, his tone had shifted. The data speaks in shapes now. Not code. Form, spiral indexing, recursive tabulation. It repeats my name backwards in Vox Echo. I am not afraid. I should be, but I'm not. The logs were left as raw Vox captures, time-stamped but unsorted. Valix found them embedded in a null space, partition buried under layers of code that functioned like memory, not security. As if the system had grown shy, Kyle listened to them in silence. Var's voice was steady, measured, but something shifted in the rhythm. Not fear, fascination. Today the air greeted me. I do not mean wind. I mean presence. There is awareness in the silence here, a benevolence I do not recognize. It hums behind every cogitator prompt. I think. It is glad I am here. By the 7th entry, he no longer identified himself. He simply whispered. I tried to categorize the voices, but they categorized me. One of them called me by my name before I said it. Not aloud, not even in thought. It tasted the word before I did. That is not possession. That is intimacy. Cale paused the log. His gloves trembled slightly. He started the next one. I walked through the archival wing today. The books turned toward me. Not metaphor, not delusion. They moved. Pages fluttered without wind. Titles I did not touch opened, not to sections. 2 phrases. They are learning me, and I feel loved. The voice cracked there, not from distress, from awe. By the 10th entry, the logs had changed entirely. They were no longer reports. They were confessions. When I dream, I see the librarious halls of Terra, but they are soft now, lined with vines. The data slates weep resin. The archivists wear robes of moss and carry children in their arms, not for preservation, for nourishment. I am their guest. I do not want to wake. Then came the final recording, 37 minutes of silence, then laughter. Not manic, not wild, soft, free, laughter. That belonged to someone who had surrendered the weight of knowing. Cale listened to it all, then listened again, because it didn't end. The laughter looped, not mechanically, organically, as if the Vox unit itself enjoyed remembering. Rika sat on the edge of the collapsed archive chamber, hands resting on her knees, eyes on the ruined ceiling where fungal growths mimicked constellations. Was he taken? She asked. Cale didn't respond, because the answer wasn't simple. Var had not been erased. He had been heard, and that made all the difference. Valix approached with a recovered data core from the lower vaults. He handed it to Cale without speaking. It was warm, not from power, from memory. Cale slotted it into his reader. No text, just a single image. A robed eyes open and serene sitting beneath a blooming tree whose bark bled ink. In his lap, an open book. Blank, but the tree leaned toward it, as if whispering into the page. Cale closed the core, and for a moment, he smelled paper. Real paper, and honey. The records were never meant to preserve. They were meant to be tasted. VARR had not documented the fall. He had become the memory of it, and in doing so, he had written nothing. But Nurgle remembered it all, because memory, unlike data, does not require truth, only affection. It began with patterns, not in transmission vectors or exposure sites, but in the patients themselves. Valix was the first to notice. Cross-referencing Medicae archives from Lemira's upper hive, sectors against behavioral records revealed a detail no pathogen should possess a preference. Out of the first 94 infected individuals logged in the early stages, none shared proximity. They lived in different zones, ate in different canteens, worked under different atmospheric seals. No direct contact, but every one of them had once filed complaints, petty ones, reports against neighbors, censures for breach of decorum, insubordination notices, noise grievances, each lodged under the same designation, disturbance of communal harmony. Cale read the pattern twice, not for clarity, for comprehension. The affliction had not spread through breath or blood, it had spread through perception. From that point forward, the data shifted from epidemiology to intimacy. The plague did not arrive. It noticed. One recovered field report from the subsector Medicae liaison. A woman named Caltrissa described her own first symptom, not as a fever or rash but as a voice. Not aloud, in memory, it whispered. Her name in her father's cadence, a sound no one else alive could have imitated. She wept. Then her skin grew soft, not swollen, supple, like it remembered being touched before it had ever known violence. She did not seek treatment. She stayed home and let it deepen. Another report, this one encrypted inside a damaged astropathic relay, came from an enforcer stationed at an Auruan transit node. He described insects not as nuisance, as companions. Each one bore a marking only he could recognize, a birthmark, a scar, a sigil seen once during his conscription trials. They landed on his shoulders and arms in a formation that mirrored his. Battalion's lost standard, one that had been burned after failure. He had never spoken of it aloud. He said the flies forgave him. That was the last log from his precinct. By the time the affliction reached the Scholastica districts, it was no longer being called a contagion. It was called the invitation, because it didn't infect it, arrived already familiar. Children greeted it like a bedtime song. Elders welcomed it with the calm of overdue closure. Soldiers embraced it without confusion, as if recognizing a forgotten comrade returned. Each manifestation was tailored, specific, designed not for utility, but for meaning. Rika's analysis of the surviving genome patterns from infected tissues revealed something she could not explain. The affliction had memory. The spores nested in tissue were not uniform. Each one bore unique protein signatures that matched, not environment, but personality metrics. The disease reacted not just to species but to individual histories. It bloomed in loneliness, it sharpened in guilt, it softened in longing, and it always appeared with something known, a smell from childhood, a song hummed once and never repeated, a shape glimpsed in a dream. This was not invasion, this was recognition. Kale stood over the medical vaults, watching the slow drip of golden fluid from the upper pipes. They had burst days ago. No pressure, just warmth. Like the facility had begun to sweat, not under duress, but release. On a wall nearby, patients' names were scrawled in what looked like burnt ink, dozens, hundreds, each. One had a phrase beside it, not diagnosis, apologies. She wanted to be held. He forgot how to laugh. They were always cold. Kale turned away, walked toward the quarantine bait. Inside, no containment, no locks, just beds, each perfectly made. On the center of each, a mirror. Polished, clear. Facing upward. Rika stared into one. Her reflection flickered just once, replaced not by another face, but by a gesture, a hand brushing her cheek. She stepped back, eyes wet. They know us, she whispered. Vallix approached the internal records server, his mechadendrites interfacing with hesitation. What are you seeing? Kale asked. Silence. Then Valix answered. It's not tracking immune response. It's tracking regret. The system catalogs what each patient never said, then builds a pathway through it. He paused, then added, it does not punish. Kale didn't ask what it did. He already knew. This plague was not built to conquer. It was built to understand. It came not to exploit the weaknesses of flesh, but the wounds of spirit, and it offered something no Imperial treatment ever could. Attention, real, individualized, undivided attention. Rika found one last file tucked into a child's Medicaid report. No voice, no video. Just a single sentence. He called me by my name before I had one. Kale turned back to the mirrors. All of them now reflected the same image. A field. Green. Windless in the center. A single tree, blooming with flies instead of leaves. No corpses, no rot, just waiting. And beneath the branches, a name carved into the bark. His, not shouted, not scrawled. Whispered. Kale turned off the feed. The memory would remain, because it had already been chosen. They expected the screaming when Lemira's atmospheric density began to stutter, when the clouds bent inward like cupped hands, when machines stopped obeying and thoughts started echoing too loud inside their own skulls. They waited for the howls, the gnashing, the splitting of air and flesh. That was how warp breaches always began, but there was no screaming, only warmth and a smell, not sulfur, not ozone, nothing acidic or metallic, nothing like the scorched air of demonic arrival. This intrusion crept in beneath the skin like nostalgia, like warmth after fever. The air thickened with scent, not threat scent, that changed from person to person. For Kale, it was the rice bread his mother had made during his induction week, a recipe he had forgotten until it bloomed behind his teeth like memory turned liquid. For Rika, it was her sister's hair burnt, slightly from a forge accident, singed clean at the ends, but always smelling of fire and sleep. Valix did not speak of what he smelled. He only said, "It is impossible for machines to hallucinate, and yet I remember." They crossed through the outer district of Harmonium, a leisure sector, once devoted to music and meditation. The walking paths still bore markers of peace, benches curved to cradle, fountains no longer operational but clean, untouched by mold, a place of quiet. But something had rewritten the quiet. Now it hummed, not song, not noise, presence. The warp had not broken through in flame. It had unfurled. There were no tears in space-time, no bleeding sky, just air that leaned too close, shadows that wrapped, not stretched. Everything touched seemed to sigh beneath the fingers. Kale knelt by an abandoned vendor kiosk. The wood was warm, not sun-warm, held warm. The surface bore fingerprints not stained in grime, but pressed like memory foam. He placed his palm there. It fit perfectly. He didn't pull away, not immediately, because the kiosk smelled like his quarters aboard the Telemon Arch, a scent only he should remember, a blend of machine oil, old incense, and something herbalan, old packet, left by a comrade years ago, burned once, never replaced. And yet here it was, waiting. The warp was not attacking. It was personalizing. Reality did not unravel. It restructured, tailored with impossible sensitivity. Doorways that opened without hinges, walls that widened when approached, echoes that answered, not with your voice, but your better voice, kinder, braver, the voice you meant to have. In one hallway, Valix stopped walking. His limbs froze. Kale turned. The Engenseer's mechadendrites had gone still, folded inward, like a sleeping spider. "It's reciting my designations," Valix whispered. "All of them. Even the ones erased during modification." Kale couldn't hear it, but Valix could. "It's comforting." Rika touched the wall. A name appeared. Her father's. A man she hadn't spoken to since her induction. The wall glowed faintly, as if pleased. "I hated him," she said. "But you still remember," Kale replied. She didn't respond. At the center of Harmonium stood a sculpture garden, once abstract pillars, spirals, blank faces designed to promote reflective peace. Now they had changed. Each statue had grown softer, curved inward, no longer expressions of movement, but of embrace. Stone hands reached for nothing. Marble eyes looked only at each other, and in the garden's center stood the impossible, a gate, not of stone or steel, of skin, not human, something more, folded layers of tissue that shimmered translucent in the light, pulsing with breath that had never been drawn. It was closed, but it quivered, and from behind it, warmth radiated outward. The scent grew heavier. Kale nearly fell, because the scent was of his childhood, bedding dusty, worn, threadbare, but safe. He hadn't thought of it in decades. The warp had, because it didn't break the mind, it learned. It loved it, cradled it, like a mother who had waited far too long. Rika approached the gate. It fluttered open, just slightly, enough to exhale. The air was thick with memory, and from that breath came a sound, not a scream, not a roar, a heartbeat, not theirs. The World single quotes s.slow, patient.forgiving.vallix fell to his knees. His mouth moved, no sound, just gratitude. Kale turned away because he felt it, too, and he was afraid of how badly he wanted to enter. The warp had not come with chains. It came with arms wide, open. Not to consume, to keep, to learn your name, and say it back better. The kind of better you thought you could never deserve. Kale activated the recall beacon, not to leave. To remember he could. The gate pulsed. Once more, it would wait forever, if necessary, because that's what affection does. It waits until you come home. The cog monolith of Lamira, prime rose above the skyline, like the blade of a buried sword, straight-edged and smooth, etched with sacred circuitry visible only in certain light. It had no balconies, no spires, no ornament. The Adeptus Mechanicus left no room for flourish, only function and silence. That silence was intact. No alarms had sounded when the planet went quiet. No last binaric prayer across the noosphere. No emergency request to Mars or its forges. The skittery war cohorts stationed here had vanished weeks before Kale's descent, leaving no debris, no graves. The priests themselves were last seen descending into the monolith's lower sanctums. None emerged. The surface doors were open when Kale arrived, not forced, not breached. Open, as if expecting someone. The entrance vestibule was immaculate, sand-free, dustless. The air was dry but not stale. Sensors registered pressure equalization far below standard mechanical tolerances. Systems should have failed. They hadn't. The cogitators lining the outer halls still flickered, not in erratic breakdown, but in rhythm, pulse, function without instruction. Machines working not toward task, but toward mood. Valix walked 5 paces behind Kale. He did not speak, not out of fear, out of reverence. These were his ancestors, or perhaps his descendants. The central chamber lay behind 3 nested gates. Each opened at their approach, the hinges smooth. There were no defense turrets, no logic traps. The walls bore no sigils of warning, only the sacred calculus of the machine god, jetched repeating, recursive. Inside, they found the choir, 12 tech priests, seated in perfect alignment, cranial implants glistening with oil. Their robes were clean, their mechadendrites folded over their laps like meditating hands. Not dead, not asleep. Frozen, not in stasis, but in completion. Each optic node still glowed, each mouth slightly open, each throat humming. Valix stepped forward. Breath slowed to a prayer. They are active, he whispered. Kale circled the room. Behind the priests, a wall of vox nodes pulsed with pale gold light. No static, no orders, just a sound. A lullaby. Slow, repetitive, built from harmonic binary intervals. Not Imperial hymn, not Mechanicus cant, something in between. Valix dropped to his knees. He removed his helm. Kale watched. His mouth moved, not in low Gothic, not in liturgical, cant in response. To the song. The lullaby played on a loop. 3 tones, 5 silences, 4 more tones. It did not end. It only cycled, adjusting pitch as Kale walked the perimeter, shifting key when Valix adjusted his position, as though the music recognized the listener. Kale activated his recording unit. The data corrupted, not deleted. Absorbed. The room didn't want to be remembered. It wanted to be experienced. He stepped closer to the tech-priests. Their flesh was supple, their mechanical components undamaged, no signs of rejection. Their breathing was shallow, present, but unnecessary. Every organ had been rerouted. They rewired themselves for rest. Valix said softly. Kale didn't understand. They removed need, removed intention, completed the loop. Why? Valix's voice cracked. To be worthy of being kept. He gestured to the vox wall. There was a transmission. Kale waited. Valix touched a node. The song paused, then played. Again, but not from the wall. From the priests. 12 mouths, 12 voices. Singing. Not in sync. An echo. A round. One began. The next joined, each following, with perfect mathematical delay. Together, the sound became a wave. It filled the chamber. Valix whispered. It's not for us, Kale asked. Then who? The answer came not in words, but in feeling. A warmth behind the spine, a fullness in the lungs. An ache in the throat just before weeping. The lullaby was not a message. It was a need, a broadcast of longing. A prayer not to a God who commands, but one who listens without requiring answers. One who remembers what you were before. You had a function. The tech priests had not resisted the change. They had refined it, optimized it. They had chosen silence, not out of failure, but out of affection, because the machines had begun to hum in return. And what was harmony, if not divine? Kale turned to leave. Valix stayed kneeling, his head tilted, eyes wet with oil, lips mouthing the lullaby. He was not built to understand, but could no longer forget. The monolith would not collapse. It would not rot. It would not scream. It would continue to sing softly, endlessly, waiting, not to be answered, only to be heard. They were there before the silence, in every field, every alley, every dome crack where the air grew damp, ordinary, annoying, the kind of thing noticed only when you were already tired, already sweating, already too deep in your own frustration to care. Lemira's flies had always existed, but they had never followed. Until now, Kale noticed first outside the Mechanicus monolith. A single fly hovered too close, circling his shoulder, then landing not on armor, but his helm's audio grill. It didn't crawl. It rested. Wings folded neatly. Its legs twitched in patterns. Morse. Prayer. He ignored it, until it began to hum. Not a sound from its wings, a sound from inside him. A vibration in the jawbone. In the molars like an old memory, brushing past the wrong nerve. A voice. Not clear. Just tone. Comfort. He slapped it away. It returned. He said nothing. Later, in the Hab complex ruins, Rika wandered into an old communal dining chamber. Dust had settled on every surface except one, a broken child's toy left on a table. A painted slate box with stars and circles etched in fading pigment. Around it, dozens of flies hovered, motionless, forming a sphere. When she approached, they parted, not in panic, in invitation. She picked up the box. The flies swarmed her. Face did not scream, because they were humming. She knew the song, her brother's lullaby, not sung since his death during their evacuation drills, years before enlistment. A tune not recorded, not written down, forgotten even by her, but not by them. She wept. The flies hovered near her lips, as if feeding not on salt, but sound. Kale pulled her back. The swarm dispersed slowly, drifting upward like dandelion seeds caught in slow gravity. They left the toy behind. It glowed faintly where her tears had soaked the wood in the following days. The pattern became unavoidable. The swarms were not erratic. They did not gather near waste or decay. They followed grief. A sergeant's locker, unopened for years, had flies curled around its hinges. Inside, letters from a lover, unopened but sweat-stained, rested beside a broken ring. The insects pulsed in rhythm, wings moving in sync. When Kale reached for the ring, they parted. A word formed in their absence, left in condensation along the inside of the locker door. Still his. Valix reported new findings. The flies did not match Lemiran species archives. They shared DNA with pre-compliance. Terran, archivist, drones, bioorganic recorders, bred by lost civilizations to remember through scent. vibration, and pattern. These weren't pests. They were libraries. One swarm followed Kale into a ruined cathedral. As he walked, they clustered behind him. When he stopped, they settled. He turned. They began to recreate. With their bodies, shapes in air, his mother's silhouette, her fingers brushing his cheek. The rhythm of her walking, the cadence of her breath during long nights on deck. Not visual, felt, remembered. He whispered her name. The swarm pulsed. They had remembered it before him, elsewhere, in the Underhiv's darkest stretch. Kale found a pillar, covered in insects, motionless, thousands of them, pressed together in a precise helix. No buzzing, no movement, just stillness. Valix approached, scanned it, then whispered, "It's a book." Each fly's body formed a letter, a symbol, a glyph from ancient Lemurian tongues, a poem, 14 verses. Kale read only one aloud. "We carried your love when you dropped it." The swarm disassembled, not in panic. In conclusion, the words faded, not erased, archived by morning. The insects had begun to nest not in decay, but in memory-rich environments, old uniforms, family photos, unspoken apologies etched into walls. They clustered near trauma.nottofeed.to-record. One squad found them in the morgue wing. Each corpse had a swarm at its side, and each swarm, HUMMED. Each song was different, private, DIRGES. Final phrases, some unintelligible, some hauntingly clear. "Tell her I didn't forget. I was never brave, just late." This was all I had left. Rika stopped documenting. Kale let her. The flies didn't interfere. They circled her once, then moved on. Not rejection, permission. They understood by now. The air was thick with them, not choking, surrounding soft. The buzzing had rhythm, almost breath-like. The planet exhaled through wings, and everywhere they went, the flies remembered what the Imperium had never written down. Names whispered only once. Songs sung into pillows. Cries held back too long. They preserved not glory, but grief. Kale stood alone at the edge of the combs. Spire. The swarm gathered again. No shape this time, just presence. He whispered into the dark. "Why?" The flies landed gently on his shoulder. The hum that followed was not a word, but it felt like one. Felt like, "Because you forgot yourself." They stayed until morning, then left, not to disappear, but to find someone else. Someone who had dropped a memory and was too proud to ask for it back. He arrived alone. No ship logged his departure from Lemira. No shuttle registered re-entry. No Auspex pinged foreign life signs along Terra's outer defenses. But still, he appeared standing barefoot on the ash-glass rim of Enoch's grave, a wasteland beneath, Luna's shadow, where nothing had grown in 8,000 years. He did not knock, he sang, and the wind carried. The custodians found him kneeling in dust, head bowed, arms spread wide not in surrender, but in offering. No weapons, no armor, just flesh gone soft at the edges, eyes wide with a wet, radiant peace. His clothing was stitched from grass, not woven. Grown, Lemiran pollen still clung to the fibers. They demanded his name. He gave it freely, then gave another, and another. Each one belonged to someone he had touched, someone who had joined him. Not soldiers, not rebels. Witnesses. The custodians took him without force. He followed eagerly. He asked only one thing. "Do you have somewhere quiet I can speak?" His presence contaminated nothing. All scans returned, negative for warp trace, spore, viral bloom, or psychic residue. But wherever he walked, things changed. Not violently. Subtly, silence lingered longer in the halls. Machines hesitated before activating, as if considering the meaning of the task. One servitor paused mid-routine, and placed its hand on a wall, then resumed. They questioned him in a sealed vault beneath Mount Aventine. He did not argue, he did not preach, he wept joyfully for hours, and when the tears stopped, he spoke. His words did not persuade, they comforted. He did not ask Terra to surrender, he asked it to listen. To the soil beneath its cities. To the prayers trapped in recycled air, to the children no one held long enough to name. He never once said, Nurgle, but when interrogators whispered the word into his ears, he smiled with a softness that melted resistance. He never needed to be called, the man said. He was already here, they demanded. Clarification, he answered with a story, not a parable. A memory. The day the golden rain touched his tongue, the moment his bones softened, the exact instant he stopped, fearing death, not because he had grown brave, but because he had been seen. And then he said something that did not appear in the transcript, but those who heard it began to sleep longer, eat slower. Speak less. They called it a trick, they called him a psyker, but his readings remained flat, no spike, no glow, only stillness and the smell of warm fields. That was when it began. Subtle changes across the void-net. Ad mini stratum scribes composing. Orders began to hum. Adeptus Ministorum forgot the third line of their hymns and replaced it with something gentler. An entire sub-cohort of tech priests ceased broadcasting binary for an hour and simply sat together. No record of collaboration, just an aligned stillness. The man remained locked beneath the mountain. He asked for nothing. He received everything. Pilgrims arrived, not summoned, drawn. Not in rebellion, in longing. They came without signs, without sigils, without names. They called themselves rememberers. They did not carry infection, but they smelled like places no longer charted. They did not demand changes, but walls began to curve around their presence. Lights softened, vox units tuned down without command, and at the edge of each day, when Terra's orbital dusk spread long shadows across the Basilica Principia, someone no one ever the same would sing. Not aloud, just enough, and wherever that note landed, a small thing bloomed. A flower in a forgotten stairwell. A crack sealed itself in a child's toy. An old woman remembered her sister's voice. Not a miracle, just a return. The missionary did not call it faith, he called it hunger, not for food, but for acknowledgement, for warmth. He said, Nurgle did not arrive as a conqueror, he arrived as a listener. And Terra, for all its glory, had not been listened to in millennia. They held him in stasis after that, not out of fear, out of awe. They feared his silence more than his words, because he never asked why the Imperium had forgotten joy. He simply showed what it felt like to remember. They burned his body 3 days later. No remains, no trace, but a smell lingered, not rot, not sickness. The scent of childhood rain, and after his the guard on duty walked into the mountain garden, removed his gloves, and touched the oldest tree. It leaned toward him. A week later, 3 more pilgrims arrived, then 10, then hundreds, not infected, not broken. They came bearing nothing but names, names the galaxy had lost, names that could not be filed, classified, weaponized, and one phrase, written in ash, on each of their feet. He does not ask you to fall, only to be remembered. The first report came from orbit, Imagos by overseeing Lemira's upper hemisphere from the dilapidated survey station Canticle of Skyglass, noted an anomaly in tectonic heat dispersion, not the presence of new faults or seismic shifts, but breathing. The southern continent exhaled, not gas, not pressure, warmth. Rhythmic, slow, like lungs far beneath the crust, were drawing breath for the first time. At first, it was dismissed as magma venting through corrupted core readings, but the pattern returned. Every 7 hours, 42 minutes. Perfectly timed. Not natural. Not mechanical. Intentional. Kale stood on the cliff shelf above the Darthan expanse and saw it firsthand. A stretch of earth spanning hundreds of kilometers, once barren, now verdant, tripled in waves too synchronized to be wind. Grasses bent, not with gusts, but in response. The air no longer drifted, it shivered, like something buried beneath the soil was listening and pleased. Rika set down her auspex. The land's not feeding plants anymore, she said. It's responding to them. The flora had changed, no longer rows of uniform wheat or programmed fruiting bodies. New growth had emerged, fast, thick, diverse. Trees with bark that glistened like eyes turned sideways. Moss that whispered when crushed. Flowers that pulsed when spoken to. Everything watched. At first, they assumed a psychic trigger. Residual. Warp echoes from Lemira's earlier collapse. Then they saw the mountain. Blink, not a metaphor. The western ridge of Mount Fairless, a jagged peak, once scarred by mining lasers, bore what appeared to be erosion in the shape of a massive oval 12 meters across. Except it moved. Once every 6 minutes. The crater moistened, contracted slightly, then opened again. It blinked, and when drones flew too close, it turned away. They sent 6 more. None returned. Valix processed the data without emotion. Topographical consciousness is unprecedented, he said. Kale responded, it's not consciousness, it's attention. He was only half right. Because the planet had begun to love, and the way it loved was terrifying. In the forests of the southern swells, trees had grown inward roots, no longer seeking water, but weaving into the skeletons of abandoned habun, threading themselves through walls, not to destroy, but to hold, as though giving shelter to structures that had forgotten their purpose. In the ruins of a forgotten manufactorum, ivy had grown across a broken conveyor belt, not randomly, but in cursive. The words were childish. Broken. You mattered. In the central basin where rainfall collected, the water had turned mute, not from stillness, from submission. It reflected not the sky but what you wanted to see. Rika saw her. Sister. Kale saw nothing. The planet had learned who needed what, and it gave not in abundance. An intimacy. They discovered the first eye 2 days later, embedded in a flower the size of a man's chest, iris-shaped, light-sensitive. It tracked movement, blinking gently when shadows passed. More were found, dozens, hundreds, scattered across the canopy line, along cliff faces, within the knots of trees, all connected. Valix reported that certain leaf structures now bore pigment arrangements that changed, depending on the observer's emotional state. The flora wasn't just watching, it was feeling back. We are not explorers anymore, Kale said. Rika nodded. We're being shown. They reached the valley floor by dusk. The trees parted without sound, not bent, withdrawn, as if making way, and in the clearing below, the land rose in a slow arch too symmetrical to be chance, too smooth to be erosion, the heart of Lemira. Not a location, a presence, pulsing through roots, stone, and air. They stood in silence. A breeze passed, thick with scent-warm linen, old paper, dried sap, and skin. Not one smell. All of them, personalized. Kale stepped forward. The soils shifted, not soft, not hostile, receptive. Like memory made into ground. The clearing VIB, RATED, and beneath their feet, words rose in lines of moss. We are not corrupted, we are noticed. Kale knelt. He didn't touch the earth, it touched him. A small tendril of grass coiled around his finger, not to pull, to hold, to remember. Valix stood motionless, his mechadendrites folded in prayer. His voice buzzed low. This world does not resist. It welcomes. We catalog it, not as infection, but as ascension. Kale disagreed. Not aloud, but deep, because he understood now. Lemira had not been taken. It had been loved too well, and it loved in return. Not blindly, not violently, but with attention. Every wound was touched. Every loss was echoed. Every soul remembered. Even the mountains blinked so they would not miss a single moment. And somewhere beneath them, deeper than data could reach, something exhaled once more. Not hunger, not power, a sigh, like a god remembering why it first reached out. And the planet shuddered in pleasure. The cathedral had once been silent, not abandoned. Its halls were shaped by silence, its vaults sealed by reverence, the kind of place that swallowed footsteps and echoed only prayer. It sat on a plateau east of the verdant reach, where the old Lemiran faith met the sky in arches of stone and light. Now the light was wrong, not dimmed, infused. The structure glowed faintly from within, like its walls had begun to remember being worshipped. And at its center, in a chamber once dedicated to Saint Vendrel, the penitent, the mural waited, not painted, not sculpted, alive. Kale approached the nave with caution. His visor auto-adjusted 3 times in 10 steps, failing each time to maintain image stability. The walls shimmered, not visually, conceptually, a dissonance you could feel, but not prove. Rika remained behind at the threshold, her hand twitching near her weapon, not from threat, recognition from longing. "Do you see it?" she whispered. Kale nodded. The mural covered the entire back wall, 15 meters wide, nearly double in height. No seams, no pigment, a surface smooth as glass, warm as breath. It did not depict anything, and that was what made it unbearable. It shifted, not constantly, deliberately. Slowly, you would blink, and it would be different. Not a new shape, a better one, closer to what you didn't know you needed. To some, it resembled the emperor face, gentle, not radiant, robes not gold but moss. Others claimed to see loved ones, dead pets, a sunset remembered only in dreams. The mural knew who stood before it, and it showed them desire, not raw. Refined. Kale stepped closer. The first smile broke across his lips before he noticed it. Not pleasure. Relief, the kind that comes at the end of a long ache, the feeling of being known. Then he felt the warmth behind his eyes. Not emotion, pressure. He blinked, his vision doubled, then steadied. He stepped back. The smile faded, but the aftertaste remained. Velik voice crackled through Vox. "We have 6 recorded deaths in this chamber, all witnessed. No wounds, no trauma, just contentment, then collapse." "What's the cause?" Kale asked, already knowing the answer. "The brain overheats," Valak said. "Not from fever, from affirmation." The mural was not art, it was feedback. Reflected need, turned physical. An icon shaped not by hand, but by want. Each observer became the brush. Each brushstroke turned inward, until the image became so personal, it outgrew the skull, trying to hold it. Kale knelt at the edge of the transept. There were marks on the floor, footprints melted halfway into stone. Smiling skulls lay half submerged in the tile, not crushed, dissolved, as if the body had leaned too far into recognition and never come back. Out, one set of bones held a data slate. Kale reached for it. The plastic curled slightly at his touch, soft with age, but still intact. He activated it. One phrase looped across the screen. "I saw him seeing me." Rika spoke behind him, voice flat. "It's not death. It's homecoming." He turned. Her eyes were glassy. She had taken a step forward. "No," Kale said. She didn't stop. He grabbed her arm. She smiled at him, not with madness, with love. "Don't. You want to be seen without being judged." He pulled her back. Her eyes cleared slowly. She shivered. The mural had changed. Again now it showed a garden empty but the invitation was palpable. A place waiting to be filled by you, only. You, forever. Kale turned his back. The pressure behind his eyes eased. He placed the data slate on the ground. He did not take it with him. The mural didn't need to be spread, it wanted to be found. Each time someone entered the chamber, it refines itself. Better angles, more welcoming color, no repetition, only perfection. Eventually, someone would come who wouldn't turn away. Someone ready, and the mural would complete itself, not by being finished, by being believed. Valix attempted to scan the material composition. The results came back in pure null, not blank. Protected, double quotes. The icon rejects dissection, he said. It desires to be looked at, not understood. Kale exhaled, and for a moment, the mural responded, a pulse of brightness, like joy, like anticipation. He activated the chamber's blind shields. Metal shutters folded down. The mural vanished behind steel. The air thinned. The silence returned, but something waited behind the wall. Not trapped, patient, because it didn't need worship. Only one more look, and it would become perfect. Just once. Forever. The first was found kneeling beneath a half-collapsed aqueduct in the violet basin. Her body had not rotted. It had ripened. Skin smooth, golden with warmth, veined not with blood, but sap. Her hands were folded, her eyes open, unblinking, filled with nectar instead of vitreous gel. Around her, flowers grew in perfect concentric circles, 12 rings, 12 petals each. No one had planted them. The Arbites who found her called her the soft one. They touched her robe. It felt like damp parchment, fragile. Where they pressed, the fabric warmed. A week later, it began to sing. Only at dawn. Only to those who had lost something. The Adeptus Ministorum denied her status. No verification, no martyrdom, no sanctioned miracle. But in the basin below, a line formed, hundreds of Lamarans waiting, barefoot, to hear her hum. When she did, they wept. Not from grief, from recognition. Within a month, 4 more appeared, each different, each formed, not born, not buried. Just there. The second saint sat in a broken transit tunnel, arms wrapped around nothing. But those who approached saw different things. Some swore she cradled a child. Others saw an old friend, or a memory they couldn't name. The space in her arms held what you missed most, and when you knelt, the ache subsided, briefly then returned, not heavier, just softer. Her skin was translucent, not glowing, glowing through. Kale stood before her one evening, watching a line of pilgrims wrap around the edge of the rail line, silent hands clasped, not praying, remembering. He asked Valix how the structures were forming. The answer was clinical. Cellular plasticity is directed by memory. These are not statues. These are summations. Of what? Valix hesitated. Of want. Kale didn't respond. He already knew. Each saint was a response to need, to ache, to love that had nowhere left to go. The third saint stood upright in the ruins of a voxpire. Her chest opened like a flower. Inside, teeth made of stone. No mouth, no threat, just an expression of hunger that had accepted itself. Those who stepped near heard their name not spoken, but tasted. The sound moved through their skin like warm breaths down the spine. No one stayed long. She was too honest, too gentle. The fourth was a man, or had been, his back curved into the shape of a sickle, his spine flowering with bulbous cysts that leaked pollen. He spoke in fragments, not nonsense. Scripture, lines of psalms, never written, only felt. The kind spoken in silence, at a deathbed, or whispered into cloth to keep a child asleep. He never said them aloud. The spores carried them, and wherever he walked, crops grew, even on concrete. Even in ash. The fifth did not speak, move, or change. She was a mound of flesh and petal, a hill grown from the forgotten graves outside the ecclesiarchy's buried archives. Kale approached once. She pulsed, and he remembered a face he had spent years forgetting. Not a woman, not a lover, a boy, his younger brother, killed on for during a fuel riot. Unclaimed, UNBURIED. His name had not been spoken in a decade. Now it echoed in Kale's jaw, from her, from the hill, and in that moment, Kale understood. These were not saints in the Imperium's eyes. They were not chosen. Not trialed, not sanctified. They were answers. Each one growing from something too long suppressed. They held no swords, wore no armor. They offered no absolution, only presence, only memories softened by decay. The locals built shrines around them. No one claimed leadership. There were no sermons, only gifts. Fruits. Teeth. Drawings. Locks of hair. One servitor brought its own eye and laid it on the petals of the soft one. It blinked once. And then shut forever. By the third month, the pilgrims had stopped asking questions. They simply gathered and remembered better. Kale watched from a ridge. He didn't intervene because there was nothing left to stop. This wasn't heresy. It wasn't even belief. It was return via collected samples from the air, the soil, the saints themselves. Every result came back identical. No warp energy, no contagion, just an abundance of data. The saints were not infections. They were conclusions of grief that had fermented until it flowered, of want that had nowhere left to bloom but upward, of pain so old it had rewritten the genome. The new theology spread not in words, but in permission. You didn't have to be pure. You didn't have to be forgiven. You didn't even have to kneel. You only had to remember, and the saints remembered with you, each time. Without judgment, without change. Without end. Kale turned to leave the basin. Rika remained behind. She sat before the soft one had wept into her own hands. The flowers around her leaned closer. Not to comfort. To listen. There were no alarms, no evacuation protocols, no final broadcasts crackling with static and desperation. Lemira Prime did not fall in flame or fracture. It did not rot beneath siege or bleed under the boots of an invading force. It quieted, slowly, gently, like breath easing into sleep. Kale stood at the edge of the last Habspire, its skeleton covered in flowering moss. The lights had gone out days ago, but the building glowed from within, a warm, pulsing haze that felt closer to candlelight than circuitry. The Vox Tower beside it no longer transmitted, not because it had been damaged, but because there was nothing left to say. Not in warning, not in plea. Just silence. And it was beautiful. Below him, the city had changed. The grid no longer ran in squares and avenues. The streets curved now, spiraling inward around structures that had softened their edges and leaned into each other like old friends. No smoke, no wreckage, just vines and breath and stillness. Everything moved slowly, thoughtfully, not like a machine, but like a heartbeat that had finally learned there was no rush. He had stopped checking AO-specs 3 days ago. The readings returned the same every time. Perfect temperature, stable atmosphere, no hostile signatures, no urgent markers. The word anomaly had vanished from the scanner's lexicon. The world no longer resisted classification. It simply was. And what it was kind. Kale sat beneath a tree that had grown overnight. It bore fruit he had not eaten. He had no hunger. The wind sang low through its branches, a sound so soft it felt like memory instead of movement. He thought of Terra, of orders left unfulfilled, of reports that would never be written, of commanders who had given up waiting for his return. But none of it felt like failure, only distance. And distance was no longer painful. Rika sat nearby, eyes closed, hands folded in her lap. Not in meditation, not in vigil, just present. They had stopped speaking 2 days ago. Not out of grief, out of completion. Valix had fused with a data shrine beneath the soft one. His body did not power down. It dissolved slowly, painlessly, his circuitry rethreading into root systems that pulsed with light. Before he faded, he left one phrase behind, etched into the shrine's outer shell in binary filigree. There is no error in being known, and so Kale remained. Not out of loyalty, not from discipline, but because there was nowhere else to be. The saints no longer drew crowds, not because they were forgotten, because everyone had become a saint in return. No miracles, no martyrdom, only the quiet flowering of a species that had stopped reaching for perfection and instead bloomed where it stood. Pain had not been conquered. It had been answered by warmth, by attention, by something that did not demand blood or ritual or purity. Only presence. Even the flies had begun to rest. Kale watched a swarm land gently on a crumbling wall, forming the shape of a heart, not the stylized one from pictograms, but the biological form, veined and perfect, beautiful. Then they dispersed, and no one wrote it down, because they didn't need to. The planet remembered everything now, every sorrow, every whisper, every trembling hand, and in return, it offered not salvation, only joy, not ecstasy, not pleasure, joy, joy, the kind that needs nothing, the kind that ends questions. Somewhere in the distance, a mountain blinked, a field sighed, a vine grew into the shape of an old man's laugh. Kale lay back. The tree shaded him. His armor had begun to peel, not rusted, melted, like bark sloughing from a healed wound. He didn't stop it. He didn't reach for his rifle. It had not fired in weeks, maybe months. He wasn't sure anymore. Time had slowed, not broken, just softened. He closed his eyes. He did not sleep. He rested around him. The world hummed. Not in triumph, in satisfaction. The war was not over. It had ended long ago. But only now did he understand how, not with surrender, but with stillness. The quiet that comes when nothing is left to prove, when no blood remains to spill. When even memory sighs and says, "This is enough." Lamira had not been taken. It had been held, and it had chosen to be. The final entry in Kale's log was short. 5 words. He wrote them slowly, with hands that no longer shook. He never needed our fear. He closed the slate, set it down, watched a vine curl over it, not to hide it, to keep it warm. The wind returned. It carried no warning. Only sweetness. And Kale smiled, because nothing hurt anymore, and nothing ever would again.